Contour line practice, we're going to focus on creating form using our value. So contour line is just following the shape of your object, your three-dimensional object, with directional marks that follow that surface. So one thing that you can do, because we're going to be practicing with text, one thing that you can do is have your text follow the surface of your object. However, before all of that, the first thing that we're going to need to do is fill up our entire surface with a base layer of text. Now, one thing I do not want to see is really big text in this practice. I just want you to fill it up with a medium text. It's about how big you handwrite. I'll be back once this is completed. Okay, now that we have a full layer of text, what we want to start doing is picking out the darkest areas of our cylinder. The value scale here is going to progress back in space. So we'll start with light and we'll make it go darker. So the front is going to be light, and as we move back in space, it's going to get dark. So that means this section is going to be our lightest section, slightly darker, and even darker. However, the one thing that's a little bit different here is that we want it to look like a three-dimensional form. So we want to feel like there is a surface here. So we're going to add a bit of a highlight right across here. And we're going to add a very dark shadow, and that shadow is going to progressively get lighter with a smooth transition out towards its edge. This section can stay the same. This will be our absolute lightest section, so we're going to keep that as a base value. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start adding the same word. In this case, I'm using the word text. I'm going to add it towards the bottom edge. To make this start to feel a little bit darker. One thing I could do is I could even add text kind of across both surfaces to create smooth transitions. Now notice I'm not working in gaps of text, I'm overlapping. And that's really important here, is that we overlap our text. Eventually it will become unrecognizable. You want that to happen. Only in the areas where we have really light value are we going to have recognizable, readable text, legible text. So I'm going to continue to kind of go across this base. Now that we have kind of a good starting point for our shadows, we're going to go along the top edge and we're going to add a little bit of not a shadow, but the opposite edge of the form should have a little bit darker than the highlight. So that's what we're working on here. Notice that I'm keeping this side open. This is going to be our highlight, kind of towards the top middle of our surface. We want to create sort of like this domed feeling. So we're going to keep this as our base layer of value. Now, one thing that's really important to remember when you're working on this is that you can add text in whatever direction you want. So I'm going to move this kind of vertical for me. And here's where I'm going to start adding that contour text. So I'm going to add text that follows the surface of our object. Sometimes you're not going to finish your word, that's fine. It's more about the mark making. I'm going to go all the way back with this. Okay, so now you can see we're starting to get a sense of form. Additionally, one thing we're going to add is levels of darknesses through each layer of separation in our cylinder. We're going to leave this one the same. We are going to just add one more. For me, I need one more kind of layer of words to make it look smoother, but you might not. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and make this just one level darker. And I'm doing that just by adding another layer of text. Now is when you can start adding in a variety of sizes and shapes to your text. So now you can see this is slightly darker. So we're going to add the same amount of text to our next level. You can also see my text is becoming more loose as we progress through this. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit darker. I gotta fill in some areas on mine. All right, and then our last one should be our darkest. And now we're going to go back into the shadow, so we have a progressively darker section. With a continuous highlight. So what we're going to do now is, sorry, I keep going back in. You're always going to see areas where you can make adjustments. So make those as you see them. However, what I'd like to do now is just add a gradient into our shadow. So I'm going to add a second layer of text that almost goes to the edge, but not quite. It's more about the mark making by the time you kind of get into it. You just want to make sure that you're still writing the word, but those letters can be overlapping. So that you're creating depth in the values and you're filling in the gaps that need to be filled in. So now I'm going to go in with a third layer, and I could switch the direction here too. Making the text as big as I need to fill the space. So as I go back in space, I'm shrinking my text. Here's another layer, fourth layer. Fifth layer. Okay. So now we have an object that has a bit of form with a shadow, a progressive shadow. So from dark to light. And I could go in and add more text to make this an even more prominent shadow, which is something I would do if I was turning this in as a worksheet. But this is what I am looking for you to complete today.